One of the things every project manager and manager need to know about is the power of a learning organization. Learning organizations can become a huge differentiator to any business. You're going to be more effective and efficient with your people, create a happier environment to work in, create better client satisfaction, and finally, it will improve your ROI, or your profitability bottom line. That's something every organization wants to see more of. Let's talk about what the nature of a learning organization is. First of all, it's a culture. It's a learning culture inside your organization. Next, it's about leadership, partly because you need to provide time and effort, and that means budget. And only leaders can generally allocate budget. So you need to create this kind of leadership mindset and leadership by example. Third point is collaboration. You need to be collaborative in your learning. Individual learning is really key, important for personal growth, and much more. But if you're collaboratively learning, you're creating the learning organization. Next is instilling knowledge sharing. This is part of collaboration, but it's very specific. Here we're encouraging the engagement of ideas, the diversity of how people learn, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and also experiencing the growth that comes from curiosity, no fear of failure, and just asking why. Letting anyone have the ability to ask why not, or how about this, really opens up this knowledge sharing vibe you want in your organization. And as I already mentioned, personal growth, letting people learn what they want to learn, and that's both professionally and personally. If people feel they're in the learning mode, a growth stage of their life, no matter what they're learning, it's helpful because engaging in any kind of learning helps you build that muscle. And to make that learning stick, it's got to be personalized. If you're trying to remember some theoretical thing, for a lot of people, that's difficult. But if you make it practical and suited for the situation, you're going to have better retention and better usability. And finally, evaluation. Whatever you're doing to create a learning organization, evaluate it, assess it, track it. Do that as a group. Do it transparently. And then learn how to get better. Work together with the team to figure out what areas you need to improve on to make your learning organization even better. This concept of continuous improvement is part of the very nature of a learning organizational culture. And the fact is, the lifeblood of any project is the concept of learning, doing better than you did in the past, learning from mistakes, and taking on new ways of working. All of that helps projects be more efficient and effective. People get better and grow into new aspects of their jobs, or even up the chain, so that a functional person becomes a lead becomes a project manager becomes a program manager. If you want to think about moving up that curve and getting as many of your people to move up that curve as possible, you're on the right track for the learning organization mindset. So here I've got a model on how people learn, and there's a couple of pretty common ways of thinking about this. The first is the model of visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic. This is so core to how we learn as human beings. We may not even be aware of it. So for instance, if I need to work on a particular project component, I'm going to write documentation down. I'm going to make notes when I'm learning. That way I can retain it. It's my visual way of connecting my writing to my ability to remember. Also, seeing models like the one I'm showing you now helps me to visualize the thing I'm talking about. So whether you're visual, that might be graphics, it might be documentation, or auditory, listening. Maybe that's a podcast, maybe that's listening to people in a workshop. And then read, write is reading a book, a text, or a manual, or writing those things out, writing out what you're learning. Even if it's already written down, sometimes rewriting it can help you connect with that information. And kinesthetic is really about using your hands, modeling something, creating a 3D model of a final product, or creating a process flow that actually has moving parts. It can also just be building something with your hands. I love to do team building icebreakers where we have to build something. It's also proven that using your hands or motion when you're learning can help you retain those learning moments. The other aspect is kind of this outline part, which is from the individual perspective. So do you like to work analytically? So that might be reading a book, thinking deeply, making models on your own, that kind of inward processing. And the other one is what I would call hands-on problem solving or solutioning. This is where you're working together and piecing together parts of a puzzle, seeing what works and iterating it. Agile works a lot like this. Throw a lot of ideas together and just see how they all fit together and what works. It's also the process of iterative testing, of course, where you literally put things together and see how they work. Fine-tuning either of these processes can be really important, and they tend to gravitate toward either the kind of project or work you're doing or the type of people on your project or work. In my experience, the functional team tends to be much more hands-on because they're working with clients and users trying to figure out what they want to have happen and how all those pieces fit together. And the technical team oftentimes are more analytic because they need to be. It's in the nature of their work. But trying to combine these, it's sort of left-right mindset, can be so powerful for your team. So try to incorporate both of these kinds of aspects into your team, but allow the people who want to be analytic to be analytic. And similarly, you have the individual and group dynamic. And these kind of go with the same point I made earlier about analytic versus hands-on. It tends to be a group effort when you're doing something hands-on, or it can be anyway. You might come with a straw man that one individual made, but you're going to work on it as a team. But analytical, internal work generally has to be done by one person. And again, you can do that in a team where everyone's had time to do analysis and they're bringing together their conversation to finalize what they're going to agree to. But you need to give analytic people time alone to do their magic, to do their thing. And if you do that, you're both respecting how they process information, how they learn information, but also how they communicate what they're learning with their peers. And then there's another aspect to the learning organization that managers need to pay attention to, which is how to actually build that learning organization. So you may understand your team, respect their different ways of learning, understand the different kind of group dynamics of learning, but then you need to figure out what methods and what kind of mechanisms are you going to put into place to allow this learning organization to flourish naturally. So how do you do that? You might look at the kinds of learning that your organization needs and figure out which extra ones you want to sort of engineer into the mix. So let's look at this chart and talk about that a bit more. So first of all, you have experiential. So that's learning by doing. This is lessons learned. This is building skill sets based on a conglomeration of all the experience in the room. And one of the benefits of this kind of just-in-time learning is that it's related to growth in all kinds of areas. Someone might have a life experience that relates to something that applies to work. You never know where learning is going to come from, so don't put boundaries on it. Let people just be in the flow with their learning. The next is classroom training, and this is an obvious one. If you're trying to learn something technical or very specific, something where you need to learn how a product, a solution, or a new technology works, you're going to want at least some of your team to have classroom training from either a third party or that vendor who's selling you the thing. Because at the end of the day, only they know how they designed it. So you're going to want to get official training. And you don't need to have your entire team do that. Think about the fit-for-purpose nature of that training and make sure the right people are going, but also that they're going to the right kinds of training. You know, if you're sending a very technical person to functional training, it may not stick. It may not make sense to them. So make sure you're sending the right person to the right kind of training. And if there's pre-work to do to make sure that they understand the kind of questions they should bring from your organization, from the use you're going to have of that tool, make sure that work's done in advance so that they're ready to learn in the context of the work you're going to be doing with that product, solution, or outcome. Next, mentoring. Now, mentoring generally isn't in the moment on the job. It's bigger than that. It's talking about someone's motivation. I found mentoring to be really helpful when a person has a new role, like maybe they're a new project manager or lead, or is new to the team, to really invest in what they're learning, understand how their personal way of working connects with this external project scenario, and also face some of the issues they might have, maybe some questions they want to handle. Taking that offline and let the person work through those things with someone who can help them is so valuable. And this is someone who can help them not by judging, but by helping them work through their own questions for themselves. This kind of personal growth is exactly what you want to see in a learning organization. And sort of the cousin to that is coaching. Coaching really is on the job. And again, what you're doing is talking about a specific skill set, a specific way of working, a tool, or something else. And it could be this person knows how this tool works. Maybe there's an ERP and this person's already implemented SAP. But maybe they need to know how you on your project plan to implement that product. People who need this on-the-job, in-the-moment training essentially need time with that product. They need to know what success looks like for your project. They need to know if there's a particular way of working, like a form or a tool or a process. They need to know the RACI model. Who's involved? Who do I need to work with? And is it my responsibility or am I accountable for doing that? And how does that get realized in my actual work task? This kind of coaching is something we already do on projects, but codifying it and making sure people feel comfortable taking time out of their day to coach someone else or ask for coaching is really important. I can't tell you how many stakeholders I've worked with that have fought me a little bit on this learning organization, but I once worked for ABN AMRO in a 7-year project, and one of the things that sponsor did was allow us to have a learning day, and that learning day was so successful we turned it into a learning week, which was bringing in the new staff, bringing in clients that would be impacted by the work we were doing that year, and essentially modeling all the behaviors we would need to execute the projects successfully. This was so important to client satisfaction, also just empathy and understanding of each other's point of view, but also updating our processes, improving the way of working, and sharing knowledge from the people who had been around for a while with the people who were brand new to the project. And there were some new complexities to the project every year as we added functionality. We taught those too, and we taught it in a very visceral way, using physical models and workshopping and ice breaking and all of the things you need to do to really create this openness, curiosity, and learning conceptual framework. And part of what I just mentioned is the last point, workshopping. Workshopping through an idea not only helps share information, it helps build it together. Building the bridge between what you know and how you're going to agree to do that thing that you know about is really important. Knowing something is not engaging the activity of agreement of a detailed process. And this is what workshops can do. Think about whether you want to include some of these aspects that may be missing from your project organizational learning behaviors. This focus on continuous learning will actually be a differentiator to your business and your team in the long run. It will help build skills and create flow within your organization. So I hope you'll consider some of these ideas. Again, check the link below for more information, and if you want more on the difference between coaching and mentoring, check out this video. And I'll see you next time on ProjectSkillsMentor.com. Bye-bye, everybody.